is a pleasure to have you back on. This is a bit of a unique circumstance because this is a Bigger Than Me podcast mini-series focused on how to start a business and explaining that and breaking that down for people. And this all came about because I see a disconnect between the people who are willing to take the risks and the people who have access to the understanding and kind of the mechanisms that all go in behind that. So I'm hoping that you can give a brief introduction of your business background working with Vancity, and then we can get into the questions.
Sure, for sure. So I guess I don't know if I'm going to be ruining your linear path, but because I don't really operate that way, but because it all is all mashed together, right? So how I started with Vancity, I started working for them in 2006. So what was happening around that time was I was already attending UFV. I was currently working at Stream, which I think everyone in Chilliwack's probably worked there or know someone who's worked there. So kind of right out of high school, I graduated in 2003. That's what I was doing, working there and going to UFB. I was actually in business, or not in business, I was in sciences to begin. And someone had did a presentation on Vancity, and I was like, what a cool organization to work for. And like, hey, like it's kind of congruent with business. Which was, I was just like dabbling in it. And so I was like, maybe it's time for a change, and I'll apply. So I ended up starting out as a teller, like, the first people you see when you come in, do your deposits and stuff. And I did that for about 3 years. And I worked my way up into an account manager role, which is, you see less people during the day, but you have more time with them. That's when you book an appointment and you like do open new accounts and help kind of with the topical stuff. Like, I say topical, like, cause you're kind of like, a little bit about everything, but you're not necessarily specialized in any one thing. So I wasn't licensed to do mutual funds, but I could, speak to, the differences between RRSPs and tax-free savings. And, I was giving out mortgages and loans and helping people with consolidation loans. And that actually like dovetailed into financial literacy, which became a big passion of mine, and facilitating workshops and helping people with their credit and that sort of thing. So, and then I was kind of doing that simultaneously with going to UFV and taking business courses, so that it kind of worked together.
And then you ended up starting your own business, Luna Flood.
Exactly, yeah. So kind of full circle, I guess. As an account manager, some of those new accounts were new business accounts, and you'd help them with a little bit of an operating line of credit and that sort of thing. Again, with the financial literacy piece, there was what do they call it? Each one, teach one. That was the, learn about your credit, learn about bank accounts, all those things that people, once they reach their kind of like mid-20s, they're like, why didn't they never teach us this in school? And like we were teaching those things. And then they had one with like a business lens, like an entrepreneurial lens. And that was for kind of like bridge the gap, right? Of what people don't necessarily know, like how to write a business plan, the things that you don't know kind of thing about marketing, and just how to collect numbers, how to research, and how to start and how to grow kind of thing. So, and like each one growing. So I like that. And I was just working with small businesses, entrepreneurs at different stages of their kind of like business lives, and it's so inspiring. I thought like, hey, maybe I should give that a shot myself. Entrepreneurs, business owners, very passionate people, and I think it's a little contagious. So I was like, I'd been at Vancity for about 10 years at that point, and we discussed on the other podcast kind of the reasons why I was looking for something different, some of my health issues, and found floating. And never did I actually even think like, oh, I love floating, I'm going to open that as a business. It came more from I want to change, and I want to do something I'm super passionate about. Like, I love banking, but 10 years, kind of just like I needed a change. It was time for something new. And a friend who I'd floated with was like, what about floating? And I was like, what? I don't know. Like, that's so big, right? I felt kind of pigeonholed. Like I had gone to school for business, accounting, finance. I was working at a bank for 10 years. I was like, what can I do? Like, maybe I can make money being a financial literacy kind of. But it just didn't feel right. I like doing that kind of for free. Like I just love giving that education piece. So yeah, I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. So floating was a good way or opening Luna Float was a good way of filling that need of helping people, but also like by bringing something beneficial to the community, but also be able to like use all of my energy to do something I like really believe in and really passionate about. Yeah.
That is all fantastic to hear. I'm interested to know first, let's start off with your education background. What courses did you take in business at the University of the Fraser Valley? And is there any that you took something away from, or you said, this really helped long term? Was there any accounting classes or anything? Because I think that I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs and some of them lose interest when it comes to school. So is there any courses that you can recommend? Because I think we get lost in the 4-year, we need to do a whole degree. Yeah. Is there a course or a program that somebody can take that they'd get something out of for business?
Yeah. So, I mean, asterisks, I've been out of it. I had to do the math and I was like, I think I graduated like 10 years ago from UFV. So I'm old. And so, I mean, I know it's changed. It was growing when I was part of it. So, and actually kind of shout out to Mark Breedveld, who is, I don't know his title off the top of my head, but I think he's like the department head of School of Business at UFV. And he had actually reached out and he was talking about another program or course that they're potentially offering. And he reached out to me as a UFV alumni as well as the president of the Sts'ailes Business Association. And it sounded cool. Like, and I think what it was when I was going to UFV. So started out in the sciences. My first course first business course was marketing. I thought it sounded interesting. It was kind of like dipping my toe into the business realm because I'd been taking biology and math and all those sorts of fun things. And so this was quite different. And it was with Mark Breedveld. It was his first year at UFV, so it was a long time ago.
Now he's the leader.
Yeah, wow. Yeah. So it was kind of interesting. Really liked the course. It was interesting. We've talked about how I also like psychology and philosophy, and I feel like a lot of different kind of business elements kind of interwoven with those theories and practices and stuff like that. So that was the first course. I really liked it, and I can't remember what the second one was. I think like Business 100 or the Business 101 kind of thing, and that was a really good course to take a very general approach. So when I was at UFV, for business, I was thinking more about a career, working for someone else. I wasn't going in with the mindset of like an entrepreneurial mindset. So that was kind of the lens I had. So I would say that for the most part, it was about, I need to do these courses to learn about business and see what I like. I think that's maybe one of the biggest benefits of going to university. Isn't necessarily the courses per se, but learning what you like and what you don't like, learning about yourself, making connections. Those are kind of the abstract benefits of going. But when you're going as someone who's seeking like employment afterwards, sometimes it feels a little monotonous, like you're just doing it for the piece of paper. But there's all that other stuff that you learn on your way. So I was aiming for accounting, and I learned that I didn't really care for all of it that much. I actually took an entrepreneurial course, which I can't really remember too much about it. I feel like there probably could have been some improvement upon it. And I feel like there needs to be more of that, because I feel like in the business world, again, 10 years ago, they didn't have as much offerings as they do now. So maybe they've improved upon it already. But yeah, like sometimes it feels kind of more of like a trade. You're going to become an accountant. So you take these accounting courses and at the end, that's cool. But when you're an entrepreneur, it's like, what do you do? Like you can take entrepreneurial courses, but are there other courses that would help like accounting so that you can kind of figure out your own numbers and bookkeeping and stuff? Sure, like any information, any extra tools in your toolbox is going to be good, right?
Right. How did the marketing help? Because I think that that's an area where people have a really good idea. Maybe they're good at implementation, but it's the getting the word out in an effective way. Did you get anything out of the program at UFE, the class marketing? I loved marketing and advertising at UFE because it kind of gave you jumping off points, and it gave you the psychological background of why marketing and advertisements are implemented and how they react to or how humans react to it. So I just liked the kind of the theory behind it. And again, I wasn't an entrepreneur at that time, so I wasn't thinking for my own business, but in general, I just found it very fascinating. I'm sure in the past 10 years, those courses have probably adapted and changed so much. Like if you just think about like 10 years ago, I don't believe Instagram was a thing, right? Like we were, and that sort of thing. So it's one of those things too, when you go to university,
or take any courses, really, that's not the end of it. That's not the end of your journey. You don't just go like, well, I know everything now. It's that ongoing kind of lifelong learning that I truly believe in. And I think marketing is a good example of like things change, environments change. I mean, I like the core background, the core learnings behind that, and like why you implement certain marketing strategies. That's probably going to stay relatively consistent, but how it looks in the real world is what's going to change. So that's something I would probably take another course and learn about, because the world's changing and you have to adapt to that, right?
Absolutely. Do you think that that's something that entrepreneurs or business owners should consider, is going back to school just for a course or two in things to get those refreshers? Do you think that that would be useful?
Yeah, I mean, I think to be hungry to learn and to know that you don't know everything, and you might never, and just be open to learning new things is something you're going to have to do as an entrepreneur. Be open to that for sure.
Absolutely. Let's move into the Vancity side of things. So if you're an entrepreneur and you've got this business idea, at what point in time should you be reaching out to financial institutions for support? Is it when you have a business plan? And what relationship are you looking to build with the financial institution?
I would say...
Oh, just pull the mic up if you're
sorry.
No
I'm leaning back. I'm all casual now. I would say that you can't go too soon. The reason I say that is because I think one big thing is, like, as soon as you need help, ask for it. If you have any questions, ask. Like, you don't have to be perfect. You don't have to have it all figured out when you have that first initial meeting. If you find a good account manager or whatever like their title would be at their financial institution to talk with, like, make that connection. The other thing is, I think it's not necessarily you have to, like, I don't want to scare people, but I notice a lot of the times people will ignore their own personal finances, but just focus on like starting the business and that. And I feel like you need to have your own financial house in order as well, or at least it's helpful. So even if you don't have a business, make that connection relationship at your financial institution and assess your own stuff, like your credit and how everything's going on your end. And then that way I think it builds a stronger foundation, and it really helps, like, if you increase your financial literacy and know how you're operating your own kind of business, your own self, your own household, that's going to help strengthen when you move forward with the business.
I really like that, because I think that a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners have a lot of stress because they're managing the marketing, they're managing dealing with customers, bringing in inventory, whatever their business is. But then they also have home financial stress of their mortgage and their car payments or their insurance and whatever that is. So that trying to reduce that stress as soon as possible is important for them to be able to think clearly and manage their business properly. So at what point, who would you speak to if you're going into a financial institution? Who would you be asking to speak to, and what would that conversation kind of look like?
Yeah, so I've only worked for Vancity. So I know other FIs, financial institutions, have different titles and that sort of stuff. But I would just go in and talk to whoever wants to talk to you and just say, hey, like, this is where I'm at, and ask them who you should talk to. And then just know what you want to achieve out of that conversation. I love credit unions, and I feel like they have, if you even just explore on their website, usually they have different programs for entrepreneurs. Some have different courses you can take. Some provide different free downloads, like a business plan template, that sort of thing. So if you're more of a do-it-yourself person, you can potentially get those resources for free as well. But if you'd rather just talk to someone and say, hey, I have this great idea and I don't know where to start, I'm sure they would be able to at least point you in the right direction.
Right. And then how does that conversation go if they're looking to get a loan or get financial support? How does that begin? Is it a long process? Is it a short process? What does that look like?
It totally depends. And often people think, I have this business idea. Okay, well, you don't necessarily have a business yet, and that's totally fine. But if you need financing, often times with a financial institution like a credit union or a bank, they're going to need 2 years financial statements. They're going to need proof of income. And if you're not even generating income, if this is just merely a concept or an idea, then you might get discouraged right off the bat. But don't be discouraged, because it's totally normal and fine to potentially need to finance some stuff personally at first. Typically, you're signing on these business loans in the future personally anyways. So like you're personally guaranteeing those loans anyways. So it's really not much different. I mean, you can still open a business account. And again, that account manager would advise you at that time what would make the most sense. Do you have a business name? Is it registered? Do you want to do that first? That sort of thing. But maybe you go in and you're looking for financing because you have an idea, but you need to do X, Y, and Z before you make the next step. Well, what does that look like? Can you use your personal credit card? Do you have a operating line of credit personally? Do you own your own home? They'll kind of be able to help expand your horizon and see like, okay, not only here's where you are now, but this is where you want to be in the future, and then kind of like help you get there. So it's kind of looking farther into the future and being setting up for success now.
Okay, so they can go look online for specifically Vancity and get some resources to get started. Mm-hmm. Then they have this meeting where they get a little bit more direction on their personal finances and how that might impact their business in terms of just getting the assets they need, if they need certain equipment. Mm-hmm. So what does the relationship look like once they have a loan, once they've built that relationship?
Yeah, I mean, the relationship, I think, could be whatever it looks like to you. Like some people, they don't mind, like, and by people I mean like the entrepreneurs would come in and maybe they don't need to deal with the same person all the time. I personally, like, I've had clients who they only want to see me, and like that's totally fine. And then you're able to communicate through email, just check in. But very often, like once you get the loan, if you don't have any other questions, I'm not going to bug you. Like the loan's being paid, that's fine. I'm here if if and when they have any questions or concerns, kind of thing.
Do you think that that's true for most financial institutions, or do you think Vancity takes a more hands-off approach with how they operate?
I feel like Vancity would take more of a hands-on approach. We're just not we're not going to be checking in very often because we have so many clients potentially, right?
So do you have to submit like your financial statements every year or every 6 months? Like, how
it depends on the amount of the loans and stuff like that. So I guess I'll explain too. I mean, I already kind of touched on it that when I was an account manager, I did some business stuff. Vancity now actually that's actually been specialized as well. So it's a branch business account manager. So yeah, that's cool because I was doing 2 jobs apparently before, but now that's a whole separate title, which is good. I feel like that's what the business clients deserve, because then maybe it is a bit more of a check-in because you have more time to focus on just your business clients. I also you can pop into their shop if they have like a bricks and mortar shop and have them sign something, and you can just be more hands-on that way, which I really liked. Then there's like another person kind of above that, or another role that's above that focuses on larger deals and that sort of thing. So the account manager in the branch might just be kind of just helping you get started with that loan to buy your equipment, or the loan to do like an operational line of credit is just kind of to help as a buffer, right? So for your payroll and that sort of thing, your Visa or MasterCard for operating expenses and that sort of stuff. It gets your base stuff done, and that might be the only level you need. That's just, you get up to like say $50,000 or something. Maybe that's all you need. But if you're looking at doing a larger build out, or you're buying property, and you need to do, maybe you're building out a facility on bare land, like that's a little bit more complex. You're going to talk to a different specialist at that point. I know for myself personally, I still like to maintain that connection. It's a warm, hey, this is so-and-so. They're going to be helping you with that. I'm still here. I'm at the branch. I know your background. Like I'm here to support you. And then it just goes from there. So
that is awesome, because I think that that's partly what's so important, is having those connections and feeling supported in this. You're taking a huge risk, you're putting yourself out there, and I think having that support is so necessary. Can you give us a little bit of the landscape of how loans work, lines of credit? For some listeners, that this might be a little bit more complicated, but I think that these are the conversations that you're first having in the bank, and it's very intimidating. So if we can get a little bit of the information out about how the loans work, what the lines of credit look like, just in a broad sense, it might make listeners feel feel a little bit more comfortable?
Sure. Yeah. Just kind of quick Coles notes. Like I would say right off the bat, credit card, you want to get a separate credit card versus the one you use for personal stuff. It's going to help bookkeeping a lot easier. People always talk about those write-offs and like, oh, my business lunches and oh, I had to buy this. And okay, maybe consult or, take a marketing course or not a marketing course, but an accounting course. But yeah, you want to keep that separate so you know what was a business expense versus your personal expense right off the bat. Plus, there's other benefits for using a credit card and that sort of thing. Having maybe if there's monthly payments coming up, like a cell phone bill, like have that run off of your credit card. And then you have a checking account where your revenues come in and your expenses come out as well, like maybe payroll. With that, definitely recommend getting an operating line of credit. So operating line of credit is something that's revolving. Usually it starts at around $5,000 to $10,000. It's like $10,000 is attached to your checking account. That way, you're a busy entrepreneur, you're running your business, and you wrote a bunch of payroll checks, and all of a sudden, before you know it, it's Friday, and they clear your account, but you know what? You were short a couple of bucks. But because you have this operating line of credit, you go into it, basically meaning that it's a revolving loan, so you don't have to apply for it every month or anything like that. It's stuck. Once you apply and you qualify and you get it, it's just there. Yeah, so the idea is that it is revolving. It's kind of like a cup. And you go into it, you drink it, and then you fill it back up, and that being filled back up is with money. And so that's basically that. It helps it's peace of mind. You don't have to constantly know exactly to the penny what you have in there. It's a buffer. It helps with cash flow. So cash flow is a huge thing in terms of business as well as like business plan writing because sometimes, it's not always the same. Like every month isn't always the same revenue coming in. Some people have downtime, down seasons, right? Like summer might be slower for people, that sort of thing. So it helps, again, it's a buffer. Whereas a loan, so when we talk about loans, they're fixed. They have fixed terms. They're not revolving. They are 3 years, 5 years, 7 years kind of thing. And that would be the term length. And then there would be like an interest rate. And you have a monthly payment that's made up of principal and interest. So it's very concrete. Like I'm lending you $10,000 and you're going to pay me back X amount each month. And after 4 years, it's gone, it's done. And that's nice. It reduces risk on both parties' part. And it usually is a decent interest rate kind of thing. Better than a credit card. So you don't be buying stuff that you don't plan on paying off for 4 years on a credit card. And typically for business, a loan like that is to buy something tangible, like equipment and that sort of thing, or supplies, get you started, that sort of stuff.
Okay, so that would be like buying equipment if you're starting a restaurant or getting inventory if you're selling clothing. I'm interested to also understand a little bit more about what you've seen in Vancity and kind of what the landscape is of entrepreneurs in the Fraser Valley. And have you seen mistakes or things that you always see that you're like if I could get the word out on like approaching this differently or being cognizant of this more, that I would say that?
Oh, that's a great question. And I think entrepreneurs and business owners, there's so much weight on them already and stresses. So I don't want to say like, this is what you're doing wrong as well. Let's add to the list because I feel like a lot of us already wear a lot of that on our shoulders. So I would say with mistakes, they're always learning opportunities. And sometimes you think you made a mistake, but that's just in this one moment. We don't know what that looks like a year from now or 6 months from now, right? So it's always like, wait and see. Let's see how this actually shakes out at the end of things. So that's my being super nice. I guess just kind of if there's any tips or kind of patterns I see, I would say I'm a bit of a business plan nerd. So I would say do the business plan. A lot of people shy away from it. It's intimidating, and I fully understand that. But I like it. It's good. You need it to start. Like if you want to do any lending, you're going to have to fill it out. And usually people just kind of look at it as it's just a checkbox I have to check. Like I don't want to do this. But if you have a different relationship with it, it can be a blueprint to your future and it can be exciting. And I would also say to look back on it and keep it as like a living, dynamic document where, okay, 2 years down, like let's read it, and maybe you're gonna laugh and be like, oh, I thought this was important back there, but now I've reassessed. So yeah, and because it's for yourself, it doesn't necessarily have to be that, like, not that it doesn't have to be structured, but the business plan you would write for a lender would be different when you're asking someone for money versus this document that I'm talking about that you can keep for yourself to just check in, see where you're at, and make sure you're on track and that sort of thing. I think once you start, there's like this beautiful like aura around the starting the new business. There's excitement, and then once you're in it, it's like, holy hell, what just happened? And you're like, and you're just in it, and you forget about all the plans and the great ideas you had because you're just running the business, which can sometimes be very time consuming, and optics it looks different when you're in it versus you can be above it and just looking down and like planning, and you have the time and you're able to breathe. And so sometimes it just looks different, and I would encourage people to just have that pause, step back, look, make sure you're still doing like you're still in line with your why and why you're even going down this path to begin with, because sometimes you get pulled into a certain direction, or you get really hyper focused on something, and it's just, don't be scared to just pause and reflect. And yeah,
there's a lot of parallels to the business plan to following a calendar, because I hear a lot of people say, I don't want to keep a calendar. I don't want to have all my to-do list all laid out all the time. And it's like, but you can put in floating. You can put in the positive things into your calendar where you have a positive relationship with your calendar. And yes, you're going to have some responsibilities. You're going to have to take out the dishes or do whatever kind of responsibilities you have in your day-to-day. But you can also put in those positive things. And it kind of sounds like that's what you're arguing with the business plan, is don't just look at it as your duties and responsibilities. Look at it as your future and the possibilities, and make sure you tie the two together so you actually do want to go look at it. Mm-hmm. Can you lay out a little bit more of what you would want people to put into a business plan? Not because you work at Vancity, but because, like, what are the things in there that will help people be more successful if they take the time to go through and create a business plan?
Yeah, well, I'll circle back a little bit too to just, again, like another tip or things I see people potentially do that I'm like, hey, you shouldn't do that. And that's asking for help. And I think that goes along the same lines as the business plan. Is there would be two main focuses on the business plan I would recommend. One is the numbers piece. I guess that's a little bit of the Vancity part sneaking out, where we want people to know that they've thought about it and that that they are comfortable with those numbers, kind of thing. So cash flow projections are really big for lenders, but also like it makes sense, because when I was looking to do one for LunaFloat, I was like, oh, it's so much easier telling someone to do it versus doing it yourself. And especially when you're passionate, you're like, I don't care. I just want to do it. I don't care if the numbers, like what they look like. But they don't have to be perfect, but just if you start the process, if you take one step forward, try to get some accurate numbers, it just opens up more information. That's good. It's also helpful so you can just be more adaptable. You can see ahead. It's like driving, right? Like when you drive, you look ahead of where you're driving to. You don't just look like a foot in front of you. You have to look farther, or else you're going to be, oh no, all of a sudden there's a corner and you have to like take it really quickly. Like you want to be able to anticipate what's ahead. And then you're just better prepared. So that's the numbers piece. And then the passion piece, like why you're doing what you're doing, what sets you apart from other businesses that might be similar to you. I think that's a huge one as well. And just like pour out everything that you're thinking and feeling about what your business looks like, and check it back to why you're doing this, because that becomes your mandate. It becomes your culture with your staffing. It helps with branding. Like it's so much like, if you have this idea and this feeling, get it out on paper, draw. And this is the thing, it doesn't have to necessarily be like I'm typing up this boring document. I love working with creative people. Paint it, like be inspired, like whatever it works, like however it works for you, whatever, if it's for you. So yeah, I think that would be cool.
That's awesome. Can you tell us about how to get the numbers? Where do you go? Where do you research in order to, you have this idea in your head, there's nothing like it in Chilliwack. How do you figure out whether or not it's financially viable or what the cash flow projections might look like?
Right. So it's hard. It can be hard depending on the business. You can try to find similar businesses and ask them for help. I think I'm a huge believer in collaboration. And, with opening a float center, the closest one at the time was in Langley. So, I mean, it was kind of nice because it was like, hey, like, I'm not your direct competition. And I think, I lucked out because floating is a very collaborative community. And we just think that, the more people floating, the better. And so a lot of people who I reached out to were super, besides the fact that they're entrepreneurs and they're busy, they were with the time, they did make a little bit of time for me to give me some of their numbers. So that helped. At least you get numbers. The other thing with doing cash flow projections is you might, it depends, we talked to someone from Whistler. Well, obviously their expenses might be a bit higher, but that's fine. I would recommend doing 3 different projections. They do kind of your highs, your lows, and then somewhere in between. So that way you're kind of looking at all of the scenarios potentially.
Right. Is there any websites people can visit if there's a more common business that they're thinking of starting, like a restaurant?
I think a good website would be Small Business BC. They have a lot of different courses, little webinars, and they have a lot of downloadable content as well, like business plans and stuff like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm also interested to make sure that we talk about, because we've touched on this already, that passion is a huge thing for entrepreneurs and their drive and their willingness to push ahead and try and bring something positive to the community. And I've heard it compared to the hero myth of seeing a problem and trying to fix that and address it in the community. Obviously, you're an excellent example because with Luna Float, you've had your own health struggles and you brought something to the community that helps other people address their health struggles. So I'm interested to know what you've seen in terms of the entrepreneurial spirit and what you think that does in our community.
I just think that entrepreneurs, if you know one, give them a hug. Because very often, we talk about numbers, but often that's not the driving force behind, in my experience, that's not the driving force of why people open a business. It should be, right, to make money. That's what we're told. But often there's so many other reasons why people do this. And oftentimes, they're putting their own financial assets on the line. They're taking out loans in their own name. They're taking out their savings and investing it into this idea, into this business that they believe in. And if they have employees, they're paying their employees and they're supporting them. And often they put themselves last, right? So yeah, I guess I see people out there who I've always felt as a lender that I needed to warn people in a way that this isn't the easy way out. Some people are maybe they're a plumber or they work for someone else and they're well, I can own my own company. I'm good at this and I can just start my own company. But it's okay, yeah, but you're really good at doing this plumbing, for instance.
Yes.
But are you going to be okay, bidding on jobs? Doing having employees that you're responsible for? And maybe the answer is yes, and that's fine, but it's so much more. So you have to you have to have something more. There has to be more of a passion or a purpose behind it. More, not just, I could do this and then it's easier. I'd rather work for myself because it's easier. I wouldn't say it's easier. It's different. And there's obviously pros and cons to being an employee or being self-employed. But I would just always kind of caution people that it's not just hit the easy button, I'll just work for myself and I don't have to answer to anyone. It's okay. And very often, longer days, because you're doing more, you're playing more roles. So the good news is most of the time people knew that, especially if they're starting their business, they would rather work 10 hours a day, 12 hours a day for themselves than 8 hours, 7 hours a day for someone else, kind of thing. You have to be kind of okay with that, maybe at least starting out. So I think most of them they were at a point in their life where they're like, yep, that's fine, I'm doing it. And yeah, that's where the passion comes in, I guess. It's what keeps you going.
Yeah, it's definitely a lot of hours, and it is putting it in for yourself, building your own brand, building your own name, and having something that you can have confidence in. I'm also just interested to wrap up this Vancity discussion on what you think the landscape is for somebody. Should they be going to different financial institutions and talking to different people, or is that less necessary? I know with mortgages, often people shop around and try and find the best rate. Is that what somebody should be doing, or should they be trying to figure out who is going to support them the best? What do you think people should be looking for when they're trying to choose between all the big banks, Vancity, Prospera, all these different organizations? Is there something that should help inform their decision?
Yeah, another great question. I mean, I don't think there's a specific right answer. I would be more, I guess, go with your gut intuition. Someone that you feel is listening to you and is supportive. If you can't go into your financial institution and feel heard or comfortable even going in, then that's going to be a barrier and that's going to be an issue. You want to do business with someone that you are comfortable with. So I would say to a degree, you might want to shop around. When it comes to lending, you don't want to go into a bunch of financial institutions and be like, hey, I want to apply for a loan, because that actually is like a hit on your credit bureau each time you do it. And it just might, I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it would affect your credit to a degree, because it would be looking like you're searching for credit and you want to get all of these loans everywhere. I think you could probably narrow it down to like convenience, like you're going to go somewhere that's close to you. Maybe it's where you do your banking already and you already have a relationship. Maybe you just didn't know that they also could help you in that other capacity. I would ask friends and family if they have any recommendations. I guess one thing I would look for in a lender or like someone to have a relationship with in that regard would be, again, like collaboration, like not an organization that's just like, you have to only deal with us. And like kind of like I'm also part of the Sts'ailes Community Futures Lending Committee. So Community Futures is a huge like I would refer to people starting a business as well, because they offer different programs. They offer maybe even more hands-on support with business plan writing and that sort of thing. And you don't have to have everything in one place. Like it's not like often financial institutions are very they have to follow certain rules and mitigate risk. And so while starting a new business can be perceived as pretty risky, yeah, often like banks are more like, again, like I said, 2 years, we need proof of income. Whereas when you're first starting out, you're just not going to have that. So you need people to take a chance on you. There's a term microloan. So again, like I know Vancity has different programs and that sort of thing, but you don't have to get it all at the one place. BDC is also like a large business lending kind of institution.
What is BDC?
What does that stand for? Business Development
Corporation?
Maybe. And so BDC is great, actually. From like I have lending through them as well. So yeah, they require a business plan. But they might be able to do a little bit more. So I'll just use Lunaflow as an example. We had to do a big build out. We got into a space that was brand new. So it was actually not even built yet. It was just a pile of dirt when I was walking by in Garrison. And yeah, I saw the sign coming soon. And so we looked at the floor plan and we actually ended up applying to lease 2 units, and then we were going to combine it into one. So we had to put a lot of money into doing the rest of the build out, like pouring concrete, redirecting plumbing. And it's a tough like sell, I guess, for like a smaller, not even a smaller financial institution, but it's not as neat and tidy as, I need money to build, or like for clothing so I can sell the clothing. Like that's retail. That's kind of makes sense. Like you're buying it at this low price, I'm going to resell it for this higher price. It's tangible. With leasehold improvements, you don't take the walls back with you when you you don't get to take that nice polished concrete with you. So it's obviously essential to opening the business, but it doesn't directly help you earn revenue, right? Like build it and they will come. Like, so it would be considered higher risk. And yeah, it's not like something you can take security on. Like if I'm buying a work vehicle and it doesn't pan out, like that financial institution can seize that asset potentially, right? Like there's nothing you can seize. There's not. So anyways, it's deemed higher risk, larger amounts of money. So then, yeah, you might have to go to BDC or something like that for that. So I think a lender or having a relationship with someone at your financial institution who's not worried about just getting what's best for you, doing what's like the right thing for that person versus like, oh, it has to all be through me. And if it's not, then you can't get it. Like, why would you hide that from someone if that's their best next step kind of thing, right?
Yeah, it sounds like a wraparound approach is what's going to make the difference for someone. We've led into Luna Float. Can you tell us what you were thinking when you were getting started, some of the things you felt like you needed to check your boxes on, whether it was marketing or getting the word out? What were you thinking when you were getting started?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's like the honeymoon phase. I miss those times. It was a simpler time where you're not fully open, like you're not operating yet. But I started social media marketing right off the bat. Like I think almost a year before we even opened, it was kind of like just putting it out there. And I feel like it's something that we did well early on, and we got the word out there. Growing up in Chilliwack, there's been times where I've seen that, like going on a business sale on a restaurant or like a place, and you're just like, what? I didn't even know that was a thing. And because you're just doing your same route and you go to the same places and you just missed out. You didn't realize there was a new store kind of thing, and then it's too late. And I didn't want to be that. I didn't want to be that statistic. I wanted people to know that we existed. We did other things too. We kind of just we're like, okay, let's do radio, let's do everything, let's see what works, and then we'll kind of narrow it down to what works with our demographic and that sort of thing. But yeah, early on, it was kind of, I liked the fun parts of like branding and doing the social media posts and that sort of thing. Once business is up and running, sometimes I feel like even now, like this October is going to be our 4th year being open, and there's still a huge list of things I haven't done yet that I'm like, oh no, it's been 4 years. How has it been 4 years? That I want to do with regards to marketing. But in my defense, I've always maintained that I wanted slow, organic growth. So for me, that's word of mouth. Part of marketing, I think that is just wowing the clients, the customers that you have who are there already and coming in, so that they are going to refer people, their friends and family, and just educate people when they come in. And then that's kind of your marketing. That's
awesome. And I think that you do a really good job of that, because that's how you became onto Rebecca and I's radar. Is you do a really good job of creating a community of people who can share their float experiences, sharing updates, being involved in the community. And so I'm interested to get why you started Luna Float and what was that community piece for you?
Yeah, so I started Luna Float. I always kind of joke that I did it for myself because I didn't want to drive all the way out to Vancouver to float. And it was true. So I really found floating for anxiety and stress. I was so surprised that something could help so much. Like you're just lying there doing nothing. How could this help? But it was definitely the calm in the storm kind of thing. It helped me rest, relax, recharge. Sleep better, just things that were super, I think, very common in this day and age, in this society. And it made me, I guess, a little bit more brave to share my stories. And the more open I was to share about that, it's kind of like if you show, if you're authentic with other people, then they are authentic back. And so it's, I think, made people feel comfortable to share their own stories. And it was like, okay, right there, like it's ending stigma against mental health and just kind of owning your own story and being comfortable with what that looks like and what you need to help yourself kind of thing. So I feel like right now we're constantly all about being busy, and that's like almost like a badge of honor. But burnout's a real thing. And it's hard when it's not, like a physical element or ailment where someone can say, oh yeah, this is what's wrong with you, I can clearly see. But when it's behind like below the surface kind of thing, and then people aren't as necessarily empathetic or sympathetic to your issues. But it's very real. So we see people who are struggling with anxiety or depression or PTSD, or even more physical things that are still invisible, like fibromyalgia and other chronic pain conditions. So while we all have our own different stories, I think that was kind of our common bond. And not that everyone who floats needs to have some, trauma or some story. Like, it can just be to rest and relax. Like, as a new mom, I think I could still say that. He's just turned 1. I'm realizing just like kind of the cliches are true, and just how important taking time for yourself is, and how hard it is to take an hour or 2 out of your day for yourself. But you totally need to kind of refill your cup. And so I think I just love hearing other people's story, and if they're getting something out of it and they want to share that with us, it's awesome. And I think just to know that you're not alone in your experience just is helpful.
That's fantastic. I'm interested to know how you approach hiring in that regard, because it sounds like you do have your own story, but how do you go about choosing who's going to be representing your business when you're not there? Because I think that's where right now it feels like hiring interviews is a hot topic on social media right now, of trying to bring in the right people and having people actually show up and be passionate and kind of share the same passion as you with regards to your business.
Yeah. So it's kind of funny because I loved human resources in university, but I never went that route. But again, it plays in different elements of like the psychology piece as well. We're all very unique. Like, we did the Myers-Briggs, just stuff like that. And so I find it very interesting. And yet I didn't take a very structured approach when I did my hiring. I went with more of that like gut approach. Kind of kept it casual, did the whole like ask questions and that sort of thing. When we first opened, because we did the social media, because we, were marketing, I feel like our branding was really on point and authentic early on. And so it kind of like was shining this light, this like bat signal of, kind of who I was, and people either resonated with it or didn't. And so right just from the get-go, we attracted somewhat like-minded people, or not even like-minded. I mean, I guess like-minded, but I want people to be unique. Like, I don't want just to hire people who are exactly like me. I believe that you can train. I mean, I wasn't looking for people who had float therapy facilitator experience, because what are the chances of that? So early on, I was just like, but I think it can be applied to other things, like as something common, like the restaurant. Sure, it's probably a lot easier to find someone who's worked at a restaurant than someone who's worked at a float center, right? But you can teach people the job. What you can't teach people is caring, is being creative, wanting to help people, that sort of thing. So I think what I was looking for early on were people who were compassionate, caring people, because we're serving them. Like, we're not like a massage therapist where we're there doing the massage, but we're curating an experience for these people. And sometimes afterwards people want to talk and share, and, just being there for people, holding space. Like, that's something that I thought was important. So when we're talking and having like a casual conversation or interview, I was paying attention to how, engaging with this person made me feel, and how, they would present themselves in that kind of environment, I guess. Also, there's just that, like, it's not a glamorous job. You're cleaning the showers and, it's just, and you're doing a lot of different kind of random stuff. So someone who was, just not like, just being very honest with what the job entails, and also being honest, like sharing your stories. I'm a huge believer in stories. So sharing the stories with the potential employee and seeing if that resonates with them. And like kind of like explaining your why. And then maybe that just helps them like have their own why. And then it just helps when you go into work every day, when you have something better, like bigger than just a paycheck. It's something more, right? They get more out of this job than just paycheck and the free floats and stuff like that. It's a nice perk. But and I mean, I think like I often forget, and I feel like I'm just lucky. I've been very fortunate to have a lot of amazing employees come, and some have gone because they've done something on their own or they've moved, but like it's always been a very rewarding relationship, whether they've stayed or gone. So sometimes I think I'm just lucky, but then I think back, I'm like, must have done something right. And even over COVID, like we missed each other. And so we would have Zoom calls, and as soon as we could reopen, like they were back. We reopened when we wanted to, June 1st, and there was no hiccups. Like all 4 or 5 people who were employed at that time came back. And I think that's just really a testament to them believing in what we're doing for our community.
That's so fantastic to hear. And I think there's a lot of important things that you've said through bringing these people on, because I think that you've done a really good job of finding people who represent your business well and who are passionate. And I'm just interested to know what you think of the resume cover letter process, because I think that sometimes that ends up moving people away from the passion and giving people a list of duties and responsibilities rather than talking about the why and why you're joining this team. And I'm just interested to know, do you think that we sometimes move too much in that direction? Do you think that that's really valuable to have people's credentials laid out? What are your thoughts from your perspective as a business owner when you get to see the impact of choosing people based on the conversation rather than what they've written up on a piece of paper?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, it's difficult because how do you get your foot in the door, and how do you get in front of the person making that hiring decision, right? I'm not at LunaFloat as often anymore. And I think like one of my favorite stories, I guess, one of the first people I hired was she was amazing, and she really helped. The first people we hired, I mean, because it wasn't like this is McDonald's and we have we're a franchise and we know exactly like everything right off the bat as soon as we open the doors. I was still learning as we go. We were still just like kind of creating policies and procedures. Like, so these people had to be super adaptable and think on their feet and be confident to give me feedback and say, hey, this is what I think, and this is how I'm doing things. And like, we would talk about it. And so, yeah, it was really awesome. The first couple people that we had were just great. And everyone since then has been great too. It's just been different because those people kind of paved the way for the next, and so on and so forth. And I don't know if I would recommend this, but I guess because we were posting a lot on social media, my husband and I were going to take part of a Namaste Hiking Co's event. It was up Mount Tom, and we're going to do this little hike and then do yoga on the top. And she was like, oh, LunaFloat's going. So she just like signed up and like did the hike. And then on the way down, she was like, so anyways, hi. And like saddled up next to me and was basically like, this is why you should hire me. And it was, first I was like, oh my gosh, like we're in the woods. I'm like, who is this interesting person who's basically stalked me? But then I kind of loved it too. And it was creative. It was a creative way to have that conversation. And again, it's how people make you feel. And by the time we got to the end, I was like, yeah, like we're friends, and I definitely like, let's continue this conversation. And I don't regret hiring her. She was amazing. So I do feel like, yes, the resume piece is kind of like a necessary evil, if you want to call it that, but because you want to like have that conversation, but how do you bridge that? How do you start that? Yeah, you can. Another one who is currently working for us, she stopped in, and I happened to be working, so she, was like, hey, I want to work here. Tell me what I need to know, and here's my questions, and like, this is why I'd be great. And at first, I was like, oh, again, like you're kind of like, wow, taken back. But again, both those people, what do they have in common? Passion, and and so she's been a great hire as well. Other than that, like, yeah, sometimes these resumes come across my desk, so to speak. And so now all of a sudden you are kind of like having to judge this person or assess this person based on some words on a piece of paper. And you're trying to make it more, you're trying to fill in the gaps. You're trying to like, well, what does this mean that she did this or he did that, like, for work? Like, you're trying to decipher like and pick, like, would this be, and you don't know really. So again, you want to put something on it that is going to maybe be interesting, pique the person's interest. But I think you have to, if you want to be serious, follow up, right? Try to reach and connect with that person. Just dropping off the resume isn't going to be enough. And I know, like, yeah, with what's going on in social media right now, it's kind of like, well, I don't need to do that because I'm like, people are screaming that there's like a kind of like a shortage of good employees. And so there's that confidence piece, and that's great. That's probably not the person who necessarily like needs to work with us. Like if they're not passionate about working for Lunafloat, for our guests, then that's fine. If they're just more like, yeah, throwing out resumes and seeing what sticks, like, then that's totally that's a strategy, I guess. But we're kind of looking for someone who's not just looking for a job, but they're looking for, yeah, a little bit more. That whole, like, contributing and being part of a team, and who knows a little bit about the business. And maybe again, I'm just lucky, and that I can come from a place of saying, like, I can pick and choose, like, who I think is going to be a good fit and who's going to enjoy being part of the team. Because I know, yeah, people are struggling to find good workers right now, it seems. But yeah.
I just see your passion come through, and I feel like that resonates with people. And then I see other small businesses not doing that and saying, here's my job posting, it's on Craigslist, and it's just, here's what you'll get paid, here's your duties, here's your responsibilities, and that's it. And to me, that misses the population that you really want, which are going to be passionate about being healthy or participating in the passion. And I think that you've done a really good job at branding yourself as that, sharing your story and getting that out there. But I'm also interested to know, what is it like to now have employees? What is that responsibility like? But how is that rewarding to build a team?
Yes, I have to remind myself that it's rewarding, because sometimes it's hard. It's like silly, because I know that this was a part of it, and I know about human resources, and I know about business. But once you're in it, there's sometimes these realizations like, oh, they're a responsibility as well. Like, as much as, you're hiring them and they have a responsibility to do the job, to, again, like, yeah, the cleaning and all that sort of stuff. But to represent your brand, to make your guests feel, a certain way. But you also have a huge responsibility to them, that, again, it's not just, oh, well, I pay them and that's it. You have to, like, they're human beings. They're like, I'm glad, like, you don't have to be friends, I guess, with all of them, but I just happen to be friends with them, I think, because they're awesome people. And it's hard for me to, just not want to get to know them better. And, like, obviously that's looked different over COVID. But we, like, this summer, we hadn't been able to do like a team bonding thing. And so we actually went to Cultus Lake and we did the paddle boarding, and it was just like a time to, like, be able to connect, because these are people who have their own lives. Like, they're not going to necessarily, as passionate and as amazing as my employees are, they also are their own people. They have their own life, they have their own family, they have their own passions and wants and needs and all that stuff. And I think it's so important to know those things and not just assume that this person's coming in and they owe you something. They're taking care of my baby, which is Lunafloat, my first baby, second baby. And you're doing more than just paying them to thank them. I just always thought, like, I don't know, like, vacation's a good time. Like, when we do the scheduling, I listen to everyone's input. So you're giving them your time as well. Like, they're giving you their time in exchange for a paycheck. But also, you're giving them your time to listen and hear them, what empowers them, what motivates them. Like, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you want? Because I think maybe that is why they're having a shortage of employees, is like, you're not offering them what they need. It's not just about the pay for them. It's connecting with a group of people. It's being heard. It's having flexibility, autonomy, having that work-life balance, like, whatever it is for people. I find I often also have hired people who are entrepreneurial spirited as well. So, like, right now we have someone who's a photographer as well, and so I'm very supportive of that. We've hung and some of her photography in our space to sell for her. We've, I'm cognitive of her schedules and when she needs to like do shoots and stuff like that. We've hired her for different shoots, right? It's just about, again, like the collaboration piece, and I want them to succeed in all of their facets of their life, not just here at LunaFloat, right? So I just think if you can, I mean, maybe that's not easy for other businesses. We only have 4 or 5 employees at a time. So I understand with like other businesses where there's more employees, but don't just lose them as like a number and like, oh yeah, we have too many employees to do that. Like I still think in some capacity you have to be able to be more attainable, approachable, and yeah, it's a relationship. And if you want them to work hard for you, I think you need to work hard for them, and however that looks and what they need.
I think that that's really important, because I think of that disconnect occurring, and then that disconnect occurring with that employee and the customer, and that over time taking place where if you're not connecting with your team, then they're not going to connect as well with your customers, and then long term that's going to have impact on the viability of anybody's business. And so I think continuing that relationship is so important, and I'm really grateful to hear that, because I think that that is where the soul of like LunaFloat or whatever the business is so important to keep in mind, because most entrepreneurs start with a passion, and then by 5 years, maybe 10 years, they start to disconnect from the people doing the day-to-day work, and then that starts to cause problems for them. I'm also interested to know about Stolo Community Futures. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved and about the organization?
Right. So Community Futures is all throughout BC, like the Lower Mainland and stuff. Like there's Community Futures South Fraser. Stalo Community Futures is just a community futures with an Indigenous lens. So while any Indigenous entrepreneur can go to any community futures for help and or lending, Stalo is kind of like just for Indigenous entrepreneurs. It's located off Vetter at Stalo. And I got into it because of Vancity. I was working with entrepreneurs, and I've been with them for like 6 or 7 years, so I don't actually even remember, to be honest, who met who, like how we bumped into each other, how that actually started. I'm thinking maybe like Vancity had a Indigenous kind of liaison rep from their head office who would come to all the different communities and help with different things. And I think maybe he introduced us, and then from there, basically, it made sense. Like they really cool. Like, so the committee, they have a board of directors, and then they have a committee that makes kind of like the some of the decisions on some of the larger lending. Other than that, they have like a basic account manager who would be the person you would talk to, who would help you with your business plan and give you a loan or not. At a certain point, threshold, they would have to refer to a committee to get approval. So you would give your business plan to them, and then they would kind of do their due diligence and then present it to the committee saying, this is why I want to give this person this money, and give you all of the details. And then as a committee, we would discuss and deliberate and that sort of thing. So early on, we had, again, kind of a diverse group of people. My background was my business background, as well as my financial literacy background. Being a lender myself, I knew what we looked for. Maybe we were a little bit more, not structured, but like risk averse. Like we were all about mitigating risk, and we need the 2 years, whereas Community Futures was a little bit more flexible, a little bit of that micro loan kind of piece. Whereas, I mean, Vancity is really good though about like looking at the whole picture and your character and all that stuff. Like we would try as hard as we could. But again, Community Futures was a different avenue as well. And we had an elder who didn't really have a lot of financial background, but she brought a lot of other huge assets to those deliberations as well. So yeah, and then that's always changed with people coming and going throughout the committee, but a great group of people, and they're like they do so much for the community. They there's lots of different workshops you can take, and very hands-on. Over COVID, we're reaching out, trying to like support entrepreneurs however they needed. yeah, just can't say enough good things about them over there.
Awesome. What would people expect if they were considering reaching out, and what point in time should they be reaching out? Is this something where they could reach out when they just have an idea, or should they already have a business in place? What can people expect?
They should totally reach out, even if they just have an idea. Yeah, they're a great resource, and they'll take the time to talk through those things with you. They might even be able to refer other clients like that might be able to help, like almost in a mentor kind of way, which I think is really cool. But or again, point them in the right direction of, okay, here's your next steps, and come back to us after you've done this, this, and this. Or they have books, like here's some suggestions on what you could do, and wealth of information. So, and if they have, like, they run lots of different workshops, so there might be a workshop coming up that would be super interesting for them and that sort of thing.
Can you tell us a little bit about the loans process? You mentioned microloans. How does that all look? And from your position as somebody who gets to help make the decision, what are people typically looking for in your position?
Well, I mean, I guess I use the term microloan, but that doesn't necessarily mean they're small loans. They can be quite large. For me, I mean, they make it so easy for the committee, honestly, because they've already done the due diligence. They've already done it. So if they're presenting it to the committee, like, quite often, very rarely are we like, no, I think you've completely, are completely wrong, and this is a terrible idea. Like, that never happens. But there might be, like, other things that, depending on the committee, right? Like, we might be a little bit more risk adverse that day, and we're like, I don't know, we want this, this, and this first. So then she would just go back to the person asking for the money kind of thing, and maybe that would have to be done first before we lend, or just different things. So sometimes it's not always a no, but like, how about we do this as well? But again, really, I mean, it's pretty easy, because as a lender at Vancity, you're the one doing the due diligence, and it's kind of on you. You're making that decision typically. In this case, the committee is working together to just, again, trying to, because it's maybe a larger amount, we're just making sure all the T's are crossed, I's are dotted, that sort of thing.
What order do you think people should go in, or is there one in regards to going to friends and family first for a loan, or getting financial support, to contacting like South Fraser Community Futures or Sts'ailes Community Futures, to going to Vancity? Is there any preference or recommendation on where they should start?
I mean, it's so personal, right? Like, I would say wherever you think you should start is where you should start. Usually it's going to be your own, like, resources. So probably just, I guess, whoever you're more comfortable with. I would, if you're an Indigenous entrepreneur, I would highly recommend Sts'ailes Community Futures, and they're going to cross-refer as well, right? Like, I had lots of referrals from them when I was a business account manager, and they'll help direct you into different ways. If you already have a relationship with someone at your financial institution, go to them. The friends and family one is a tough one, because there's a lot of emotions when you're passionate about something, and I would hesitate to tell someone to do something or not to do something when it comes to family, but I think I would probably try to avoid that at first, for a couple different reasons. One, you don't want to get talked out of it per se, like, especially if it comes to, like, you're asking family for money, and like, now they're going to be critiquing you because they're like, okay, well, if I'm going to lend you money, like, I want to make sure it's a good idea. And they're not lenders. They don't know how to, like, they might not know how to mitigate risk or how to view a business, and in that regard. So they might just be like, it's too risky, no. And now not only do you have no money, but you now have all these negative, like, thoughts and feelings, and so it might not be the best, or it might harm your relationship and that sort of thing. So I mean, again, it depends on how much money that you're asking for potentially, but I personally, that being said, I mean, I did get some help from my family at some point, so it's a very real thing. But would I start there? Probably not, just because when you're starting out, you're already shaky. You might already be kind of like having some doubts, and you just really want to make sure whatever is going to help you with your confidence. And again, they're not professional lenders unless they are. They happen to be. So I probably avoid that just for the first little bit. But that does make me think of other unique ways of getting funding, like crowdsourcing and that sort of thing, right? Like that's kind of similar, where friends and family could help, and it helps as well, proof of concept. So I've seen other float centers say they want to bring in like ice baths or something like that, or an infrared sauna, which we happen to have. But sometimes instead of just like getting a loan for it or buying it, they're like, okay guys, if you want an ice bath, let's start doing some crowdfunding. So like, and we kind of did this in a roundabout way. Like when we started, we did pre-sale membership, so it helps build capital before you're even open potentially. And then it's also proof of concept. Like, look at 100 people signed up and gave us $50 or whatever it might be, right? So not only are you getting a little bit of cash flow your way, but you're also able to use it to show a lender that, hey, like people believe in me and this is a thing, and there's a want for it.
That is fantastic. And it kind of leads into another question I have. What was the most intimidating part of starting Luna Float? Was it the business incorporation where you're like getting these official documents that says it's incorporated? Was it when the money came in and now it's time to start doling it out? What was the hardest part of starting it?
I mean, I'm obviously very fortunate that I had the background with lending and navigating the business plan, that sort of thing. So I think what comes to mind is actually why I had to finally eventually reach out to family was the 11th hour kind of thing. We were working with BDC to do the build out loans and all that good stuff. Actually, that almost fell through, which was so scary because like we had already started buying things, like we already had, like everything was like the wheels were in motion, and then there was like a big hiccup, and that was really scary. I mean, we obviously got through it. Honestly, I don't even know how. It was like meant to be, and so I was tenacious. I wouldn't take no for an answer, and it worked out. Long story short. But what was happening was we were going to lease our float tanks, the 4 float tanks, and the leasing company that was recommended to us was, well, how do I want to say this? We basically signed something at a certain rate, and then of the 11th hour, they were like, actually, your rate's going to be this. And it was like 4 times, like it was like putting it basically on a credit card. And that was unacceptable. And it felt really like underhanded, and I was not happy. And I, at that point, had different options. I was like, I could maybe go through SCF, like Stall Community Features, or I can get another personal loan. Like we don't have to lease it, or we'll look for another leasing company. But at that point, I was just like so mad because he knew that we were in a hard place because like we need these. He's the one in our way of getting it, and so we basically were going to be so desperate that we would sign anything kind of thing.
Wow.
That's how I felt, and I was more like, okay, at least I'm educated and confident enough to know that this is wrong. Whereas I'm like, what made me even more mad was other people probably wouldn't. They would be like, okay, I guess that's what I have to do. Oh, it made me so mad. I'm getting fired up already right now thinking about it. And so, yeah, I basically had reached out for, like, I knew I'd be able to acquire funds to pay it out, but for the interim, just to get the ball rolling, I needed money right away. And so I went to some family members and was like, this is what's happening, and they were equally upset. So they were like, yep, here, and again, totally like fortunate and privileged that this was even an option, but we basically were able to write a check and acquire the tanks for the intern before I can finance it, and tell this guy to shove it, basically.
Wow.
Yeah. So for my family, that was more like, that was the incentive, was to tell this guy to go be off. So yeah.
That is a lot to go through. I can't imagine. How does starting Luna Float compare to because it sounds like it's kind of in the service industry.
Mhm.
Was that like a preference from the beginning, or was it just coincidence that you weren't selling products that people would take home? And do you have any thoughts on the differences between starting a business when you're dealing with products versus services?
Yeah, so when we first started, we had heard that like having some retail is good. It's a good idea to have, but that wasn't something I was totally looking at doing. Now, especially after COVID and we were shut down, we weren't able to provide services. Our retail came in huge. And it's funny because on a previous podcast, we had talked about how when I was younger, I sold freezies on the corner, and like I liked, like back then I calculated, okay, I have to pay this much for the box of freezies, but then I'm able to sell the freezies for a little bit more, and that's how you get profit. And then as I got older, I was like, okay, like it felt weird to me to, like, retail wasn't my thing. That wasn't what I was passionate about. But how it became more of my passion and how I'm actually, it's something that I still want to work and grow on. Like, we have lots of plans and ideas for Luna Float in terms of retail that still haven't come to fruition. But it's the collaboration piece. It's like, not just, oh, I'm buying this for X amount and selling it for a markup. It's the fact that we collaborate with other local makers. And so a shout out to a 6 cent candle. One of our employees recommended them. She had met her at a market, really liked her product, really liked her. And like, candles, does have anything with floating? Well, that makes your space smell nice. It's part about relaxation, treating yourself, that sort of thing, that ambiance piece. So one of our bigger sellers, and it's like, yes, so for taking up, like, we put a lot of her stuff out on our shelves and we promote her on social media as well, and vice versa. And we get a piece of that when it sells. But she also gets a piece of that. So every month, I pay out our retailers who we carry. And it's fun because it's like, I don't know, you've probably seen it on social media. It's like when you buy from a small local business, like that your sale like makes the owner do like a little happy dance. It's pretty much true. But so when you buy something like that, not only do I do a happy dance, but then I send the money to them and they do a happy dance. So it just kind of felt like, okay, this is cool because you get to spread the wealth, share the wealth, and yeah, the love kind of thing. And then also it's like a fun thing where it's like, I enjoy these things, so I'm going to promote them, and like other people can benefit from them as well. So I guess that would be a tip, would be to not be scared to diversify. If you're in the service industry, bringing in an element of retail is good, because again, when we were closed, all we were doing was like the curbside pickup retail. It definitely helped us out in a time that was a little unprecedented, a little scary. Yeah.
What are your thoughts on collaboration? Is it easy to partner with other individuals who have their own thing, or other businesses? Is that simple, or is it actually a lot of work to make sure that you're both on the same page and that you're both putting out the same information, getting the word out? How does that all work? Because it seems like there could be pitfalls and frustrations of you're willing to market it and maybe somebody else isn't, or they said they were going to and they didn't. Like, how does that all come about, and what has your experience been?
I feel like it's in the same vein as our employees. Like, I feel on one hand, maybe I just lucked out, but I think it's also just connecting with the right people and making sure you're on the same page. And sometimes things didn't feel right and those things didn't pan out. So like, they didn't even get to the point where it was an issue, just because it's like, oh, it fell to the wayside. Our communication wasn't, on the same page kind of thing. There has to be this, mutually beneficial expectation, I suppose. But I don't know. Again, I only carry things that I really believe in and like, and so far that's worked out for me. Again, I think if it's if you're just doing it like, oh, this is a good markup, I'm going to sell it just for that, well, like, do your employees believe in it? Like, does it resonate with your brand? I think those things make sense as well. Know who your demographic is. Like, it's great that you like the product, but also know who's coming into your store. I don't know. I mean, I think I've been fortunate with the collaboration piece. I think it's also like, I don't know, maybe this sounds too wishy-washy for business, but like it's the reciprocity. Like you're not necessarily expecting something like this is exactly what I need to get back out of it, and they're not marketing me properly. Like you can't micromanage that sort of stuff. You have to align yourself with people who you feel match your brand or match your passion, whatever that connection is to them, and then just let it go. Like you can't micromanage that and be like, oh, I wouldn't have done it that way. Like just if you connect, like it'll be what it'll be, kind of thing. And if it still makes sense, like, and you can change it. It doesn't have to be forever, right? So try it. If it didn't work out, like that's okay, and you can just move on and try something different.
I really appreciate that, because consistently throughout this, you've kind of shown that you have a trust and a confidence and a relationship built with everybody that you work with, so that you don't have to stress as much about the details, because you've created a positive relationship where there is reciprocity. You do trust your staff, you do trust the people you partner with, and the team that you build. And I think that that's important for business owners and entrepreneurs to consider, because I think we get very eager and then we want to connect with everybody, and we think that connecting is easy. So I'm interested to know a little bit about how you view networking, because it's something that we push a lot of, and I'm just interested to hear your thoughts, because it sounds like you have a different approach. You have more of a, I want to make sure that there's a true connection there. It's not just about we met for coffee once and that's enough for us to be connected. It seems like it's something deeper for you.
Yeah, well, I think the connecting piece is like meeting for coffee and stuff is good. Yeah, I mean, networking is a funny word, I think, because when people think of it, they think of, that like you're at some sort of mixer and you're swapping business cards with people. I mean, at least I think that's what people still picture. And that's part of it, but yeah, not really my thing. Like, I want people who are genuinely interested in learning about other people and seeing if there's anything there, right? Like, not some people just, you can tell when they're just there for kind of like themselves, and they just want to, spread their business card and what's in it for them. Whereas when you connect with someone just to connect and share and learn from other people, I think you can learn so much from other people. And I always go in there with hoping to learn something new, or making a new connection, or hearing a new story. And I think just like getting out there is getting your name out there inadvertently. Like, so that's kind of like, I don't know if that's a bad thing, but that's the whole kind of point. But you don't have to like shove it down the road. Like, just be there and be yourself, and you might get different things out of it. It might not be sales. It might be you find someone that you're going to collaborate with in different aspects, whether it's you found someone who can help you with your marketing, you found someone who wants your product or service, or you find someone who, you might find an employee there, you might find a mentor, there's so many different reasons. Like, you go there, I think, to learn, to grow, and yes, to talk about your business, for sure. But I think you have to be open to like receiving, not just putting your stuff out there, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. Do you have any recommendations for podcasts, books, TV shows that you enjoy that have that business lens, or that have that entrepreneurial lens, that can help people get started?
Yeah, I recommend Bigger Than Me. To be honest, I mean, I don't have anything off the top of my head. I have a 1-year-old, and I really just wish I had more time to read. That's the biggest thing I miss. I liked anything that inspires you is going to be good for your business. So things that aren't necessarily directly business related. One of my favorite authors is Brené Brown. Found her in a very pivotal time in my life. Gifts of Imperfection was like a really short, easy to read book. I recommend it to everyone. 4 Agreements. I can't remember who the author is of that. I think Miguel Rigas. I'm not quite sure. But so nothing to do with business at all. But it actually, again, it's kind of like how your financial house being in order personally can help you get your financial house in order for your business. I think personally, if you are open to learning, and if there's anything you feel like you need to work on a personal level, then that's going to help you be a stronger, better entrepreneur as well, right?
That makes sense. Can you give any words of wisdom to somebody who's considering starting a business or who's started a business and feeling a bit discouraged?
Words of wisdom. Come for a float and decompress and just recharge, because sometimes you need to, I say practice the pause. Like sometimes you just feel like you're a hamster in the cage and you're going and going and you're not getting anywhere, and it can be super discouraging. I would say look at who you're surrounding yourself with. If you're with other people who are kind of just being discouraging, being negative, maybe pause those relationships or connections and try to be with people who inspire you and are a little bit more positive. If there's pain points, if there's things that you're struggling with, ask for help. Find the people. You can't be good at everything. So if that's what you're trying to do, is do it all, then you're going to burn out. That's not sustainable. So while it's good to learn what you don't like doing or what you're just not great at, someone can maybe do it faster for you. And if you have to pay them, that's fine. It might be cheaper, because it's not always about money. I mean, it probably will be cheaper financially if you just pay someone to do something like that. But like even your mental load, right? Like what is that costing you in that regard?
Yeah, I definitely think recommending people to go floating is not a bad suggestion at all.
I actually rarely do that. So I was like, hey, actually, I'm kind of being sassy, but it's true, because, you get so stuck in it, and you just need to sometimes pause and recharge the batteries and look at it with fresh eyes.
Well, and you see so many entrepreneurs and small business owners giving everything they have, not getting proper sleeps, sacrificing everything for their business, that you do need to recharge so you can do all of that the next week and the next week and continue. And if you burn out, there's no business left for anybody to go visit. So I think that is an important piece, is the self-care, so that you can go have that meeting with the employee and hear their concerns and their frustrations and have those proper connections. Can you tell people how to find and connect with Luna Float on social media?
Yeah, for sure. It's funny because I did a short little interview and I totally blanked on what our website was. I'm like, I've only had this website for 5 years, but it's lunafloat.ca. So you can check out our website, or we're on Facebook, Luna Float, Chilliwack. So there's another Luna Float, but it's in Colorado. So we're the Chilliwack one, Chilliwack, BC. Instagram, we're on there as well. I'm behind all of the social media, so if you reach out to us on Facebook or on Instagram, it's me. You can email us as well. We have 2 email addresses. Our kind of general one is info@lunafloat.ca. That's the one all of our employees have access to. So if you had more of a personal or specialized question that you wanted to ask me directly, you can reach me at lunafloat@gmail.com.
That is awesome. I really appreciate you being willing to take the time and share your knowledge of Vancity, Luna Float, your education, because I think that this is hopefully going to be accessible to people who have entrepreneurial ideas or are entrepreneurial who don't have those peers. So I really appreciate you being willing to take the time again and share your fantastic story and give such words of encouragement and put things in a way I hope is accessible to people.
Oh, thank you so much, Aaron.